This is CityCast Twin Cities. I'm Sean McPherson, and here's what the cities are talking about. Tiffany, what is a food you only eat once it's legitimately cold out?
Oh, well, I eat soup year round. So get on my level.
I do want to say, like, a hot pho. Like, I don't actually start doing pho until it's, like, cold enough out.
I eat pho year round.
Get on her level, Tane. She eats pho year round. Election results, a doctor's strike, and acid tripping around the Twin Cities. Sounds like a regular Wednesday to me. I'm joined by Tane, our political contributor here at CityCast Twin Cities. Welcome again, Tane.
Happy to be here.
And I'm joined by Tiffany, our producer here at CityCast Twin Cities. Thanks for being here, Tiffany.
Hiya, Sean.
We're finally getting some results in all the elections that happened yesterday across Minnesota, and we're getting some really clear information about what's happening in, I'd say, the biggest races, which is the mayor races in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Our contributor, Tane Danger, has more.
Okay, so we had an election yesterday in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Bloomington. Duluth had some big things, as you were saying. We have a new mayor in St. Paul, in Kaohly Her, who unseated Melvin Carter, and we have seen Jacob Frey reelected as mayor in Minneapolis. Those are probably the two top line things. And then one other top line thing, just to say here, is that the Minneapolis City Council, there were some things I think that more progressive parts of the electorate are going to be really excited about, some things that more of the moderates won in those races. And we're going to end up with a pretty split city council. I think progressives will have a slight majority, but probably not maybe as robust as it was in the last cycle. So Jacob Frey has won re-election. I worry that this is not going to sort out what has been years of tension and conflict between the mayor's office and the city council, the mayor's office and other places, that the campaign that was run by Jacob Frey was not one of, okay, let's all get together and figure this out together. It was, and even in his speech last night, before he knew he was going to win, it was, this is what we stand for versus this is what these other people stand for. I don't know. This is me speaking just in my own personal opinion. I think that the factionalism within Minneapolis and Twin Cities politics is not particularly good for governing. And it's going to be really hard, I think. Voters, I think, will get frustrated if that's what we look at for the next 4 years. And I worry, did Jacob Frey learn anything during this election? Did he learn any lessons about, I need to work better with people who disagree with me and actually build some different kinds of relationships? I don't know, because that doesn't seem to be the kind of campaign he was running. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, Tane, what do you think this says about what Minneapolis voters want? Like, our city's been so beleaguered from like how other people view it. And then from people who live here, I have just heard a lot of anti-Frey sentiment, but this is his third term. So that's clearly not panning out for the majority of people. Like, are they like, this is good, we want this for a while?
I mean, the just very boring sort of election answer would be, yeah, this is, people voted for this. This is what won. That said, there's always a question in campaigns. There's always what ifs, right? Like, what if the Dwayne Davis had been the kind of primary challenger to Jacob Frey instead of Omar Fateh? What if there had been somebody who had actually run to Jacob Frey's right and maybe split that vote somehow? What if the mixture of the issues that really kind of catapulted into the forefront in the last several months had been slightly different? There's a lot of these different things. That said, there is a pretty strong track record in Minneapolis of the more moderate candidates winning citywide. That we've seen that over and over again in mayoral elections, that while there are places in the city, as we saw in the city council races for Minneapolis, where very progressive candidates, DSA-aligned candidates can win, and actually win very handily in a city council race, when the whole city votes, it tends to swing more towards a more moderate sort of lane for a lot of the actual outcomes we get.
And it seems like the coalition that Davis, Fate, and Hampton built didn't pan out, even when they were sort of trying to be like, vote all three of them, rank all three of them, don't rank Frey, because you said that people who voted for one of the three still ranked Frey either second or third. Is that right? So it sounds like they...
Yeah. If everybody who had ranked Dwayne Davis and Jez Hampton had Omar Fate second or third on their ballot, Omar Fate would be mayor, right? He would be mayor-elect right now. That clearly did not happen. I understand. We are still in an early enough stage, with ranked choice voting. We've been doing it for a little bit over a decade, that people are still figuring out how to do it. My own personal take on this is that sometimes these strategies get a little too clever by half, and that voters are like, well, I'm going to just rank who I want to rank. Like, don't tell me who to rank. I like this guy and I like that guy and I like that person. And that's what they do. They aren't playing the chess game that, a lot of people who talk about this a lot and think about it a lot are doing. And so I think that there is clearly a thing here where that strategy didn't work. And I do want to just point out, I have a general rule about being very gracious to losing candidates when they do it, because I believe very strongly that we want to encourage people to run, and it's not all about winning. I do think that there should be a conversation that happens among supporters of Dwayne Davis and Jez Hampton, whether this strategy worked for them at all. I think that there was a strategy for this to work potentially for Omar Fate. He was the one who ended up with the second most first choice votes. But, this strategy for Hampton and Davis, they didn't even get to 20%, So this strategy for them to run as part of this slate just really doesn't seem like it panned out for them.
Yeah. Play second or third fiddle.
Right. Literally playing kind of third fiddle, I think is a way to put it.
Tane, let's talk about the St. Paul mayoral election. Now, that's a big one for Kaohly Her, but I'm curious what you think is going to change for residents of St. Paul, because incumbent Mayor Melvin Carter and Kaohly Her, they aren't really that far apart on policies.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I want to give credit to Representative Her, Mayor-elect now, Her, for winning this race, which, just to be totally transparent, when we last talked about this election, both Winter Kiefer and I said, it'll be a tough road for Her to overcome Carter. He seemed to be a relatively popular incumbent. And they do have a lot of similar positions on some issues. So to your question, what are some of the main things that happen? Her has talked about an urban wealth fund, which is something almost akin to a sovereign wealth fund, which is something we hear more about countries and things doing. But the idea is basically trying to pool some of the assets that a city has, some of the buildings and infrastructure, into a fund that then you can use the profits to fund a variety of city services. She has talked about just the need for the city to work more efficiently, that there's been a variety of ways in which St. Paul has been unfriendly to business with some of the regulations and just accessing city services. And then all of the candidates talked a lot about what are we going to do about downtown St. Paul. I think that is going to be a really big test for Mayor-elect Her and the city council. How are they going to address that? So, yeah, there's a lot on the table, and it's really interesting to see how different it will be in St. Paul under a new administration.
Can I ask a question, Tane, as our political brain, and then Sean as a resident of St. Paul? I want to be clear, do you think this was a referendum on former Mayor Melvin Carter's performance, given that their policy positions seem very the same? Do you think her win was due to her popularity as a representative? I know she had that viral moment where she said her parents were undocumented immigrants, and she's been just a very popular representative. So is it people voting for her policies specifically? Is it people sick of Melvin Carter? What do you think it boils down to? And I'd love to hear both of your perspectives.
Yes. I think that there's like a way in which there's almost everything you said, there's some element of it that probably is accurate.
Yeah.
I think that to dig into the ranked choice voting piece of this, I think helps maybe tell a bit of that story. So I saw one tabulation that was, again, Carter was leading 2 to 4 percentage points in the first round of votes. However, when they got to second and third round votes, her way outperformed Melvin Carter. She got something close to almost 2 to 3 times as many second and third choice votes as Carter did. And so there's something there where was Melvin Carter really working for those second and third choice votes? I don't know. There's a question, I think, there. I think one of the knocks against Carter was like, is he showing up that way? And then I think that there is, though, an interesting, getting to Sean's question about what's different. A lot of two other candidates, Yen Chen and Mike Kilborn, a lot of their votes went up to Kaohly Her. Now, those two candidates, Yen Chen and Mike Kilborn, were much more conservative, I guess, in St. Paul terms. We're talking about getting back to basics. Let's lower property taxes. Let's make things more efficient and whatnot. Those voters picked her over Carter, it seems like, by a large margin. And so what does that mean? What is that coalition that Her built? It's different than the one that Carter's been elected with.
Oh, interesting.
Tiffany, I feel like the honeymoon is way over with Mayor Melvin Carter in the sense that all that vibe of like, oh, this young man who's been really on this political ascent is now our mayor. This is very exciting. We're way past that. And if you're in a relationship with St. Paul, you're looking around and going, there's some not great stuff. I can't put that all on Mayor Carter. And to your point, Tiffany, I certainly can't put it all on his policies because I think his policies have turned a lot of things for the better, but they got a lot worse during COVID. They've been better in the longer past. So I think kind of like the shine of Mayor Carter had worn off and we weren't going, oh, the city's fantastic, so we can't rock any boat. There's maybe this sense of the most exciting things about a new mayor aren't there with Mayor Carter anymore. And he just, frankly, to me, did not seem hungry to keep on delivering and earning his right for the job. That he was just sort of going, hey, look, I'm a pretty good mayor. Can you elect me again? And that's not sexy. That's not compelling. I think he has been incredibly gracious since passing it over to Kaohly Her, which just made me feel very positive about the civic state of St. Paul. The fact that he goes, this election is about something bigger than me. Congratulations to Kaohly. No little pot shots in the Facebook post. That made me excited, but it wasn't as exciting to think about 4 more years of Mayor Carter as it was maybe in 2021.
So the silver lining for Carter, at least, is it's a baton passing moment because she got her political start in his office.
Yeah, 100%. There is very little animosity between the two of them from everything I've seen. They've literally campaigned together for some of the ballot initiatives, which also passed in St. Paul. They have been very cordial. And as Sean said, Mayor Carter has been incredibly gracious in his public statements from his concession speech.
So the big national story from yesterday is that Mamdani had this broad coalition in New York. And what we aren't really seeing, at least in my estimation, is a broad coalition of any sort. There's going to be no landslides. It also looks like if Mayor Frey remains the mayor of Minneapolis, there's still going to be a lot of friction between the city council and Mayor Frey if he remains in the mayorship. Are we out of step with the nation? Are we going in a different direction? Or is Mamdani taking up all this sort of airspace and conversation, and that's why we seem like a local/regional story, but not part of the national conversation?
That's one way to look at the national story. If you look, I would say that probably the tension and deep disagreements between factions of a particular political party is a deeper, longer story that Minneapolis is dealing with, but you see all over the country. So we're not out of step that way, for what it's worth. I think that's true. But to get to the thrust of your question, this is the thing that really worried me the most about the Minneapolis mayoral election and worries me kind of going forward is that is there a mandate for any particular side in terms of where you want to take the city, where you want to go. As I talked about in the opening, there's sort of mixed results with the city council elections. There had been a progressive majority on the city council that was able to overturn a whole batch of his vetoes, which I know you all talked about on the show. It seems like that veto-proof majority on the council is probably gone, like that they probably aren't going to have those numbers. But there'll still be a pretty even divide on the city council. And then there's this question of, if Jacob Frey is the mayor, like, are we just in for another set of 4 years of tension between the council and the mayor and a variety of other things? Doesn't feel like this election settled a fundamental question about the direction in terms of how far progressive the city wants to be.
I think we are ahead of New York City in progressive politics. Oh, okay.
Wow.
Give me a sec.
No, that's good. That's it.
All love to New York. I think there's just a different thing happening, right? Their options were Mamdani or Como. Those were not our options in Minneapolis. We had different options, even though national media tried to compare Omar Fateh as our Mamdani, which doesn't make any sense, except for they're both Muslim, which great job generalization, guys. The coalitions are fractured along how progressive you want to be. And that's a very different conversation than what's happening in New York. And like, we're a much smaller bubble. Like, nobody is like kind of pretending to be Republican, although like some people would say Frey is. But again, he's like not Como. And we're still, the breakdowns happen along like, still like where on the progressive line, how left are you, how extreme, quote unquote, do you want to be? And Mamdani, I would say, won, from my understanding, by campaigning very vigorously on making New York City a lot more affordable and paying attention to people who do the work in New York City, the people who have to get up early, the people who have to work late. And that's just a slightly different economic reality in Minneapolis. So I think it's a different conversation. I wouldn't say we're out of step. I would say we're still fighting in our Democrat bubble.
Isn't there more connecting Mamdani and Fateh than being Muslim? Like, they're both part of DSA, right? Like, it does seem to me, I understand that they aren't, apples to apples, but it does seem like there's more connecting them than their religion.
Yeah. And then, that's a good point. But also, like, why do national outlets have to call him the Mamdani of Minneapolis? Like, why can't you just pay attention to us on our own merits? We had a lot of historic things happen here. It just feels strange.
I mean, and again, just to take a half step back, the DSA part and just the strength that the DSA has shown in Minneapolis over the last couple of election cycles, and this one in particular, and obviously the strength that they showed with the Mamdani race in New York City, shows that the DSA is part of the conversation for Democrats, now and going forward. I mean, just as long as we're talking national and where does this all fit, the same night you had Mamdani win, you had more moderate candidates win for governorships in New York and Virginia and whatnot. I don't know. I think that there's always this desire in these off-year elections to try and draw a big conclusion from it in terms of which way the wind is blowing and what's going to happen. I'm always reticent to do that because a lot will happen between now and when most voters go to the polls again next year in 2026. That said, I think one thing that will be true, I think that there's a lot of voters who their Overton window, their window of what they are interested in seems wider than maybe it has been before, which speaks to, DSA candidates and some more progressive things being more on the table for certain voters than they have been in the past. And then this has been true for a long time, but candidate quality matters a ton. And I think that Mamdani, in addition to all of his policy pieces and how he ran and his identity, was just a damn good campaigner, right? Like, which I think almost anybody who is watching that race would say, like, he's a compelling speaker. He connected with voters. He turned people out in a way that is just what kind of makes politics in a way. And so that's not a unique thing to him, but it really matters when we're kind of making some of the comparisons.
We want to hear from you. What changes do you hope for after these elections? Send us a text or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast Twin Cities hotline, 612-217-0637. There's more news to discuss. Before we do that, we'll take a quick break. Nurse strikes come up pretty frequently in the Twin Cities and in greater Minnesota, and the possibility of nurse strikes come up even more often. But yesterday, 600 Allina Health doctors made history with the first such labor action of its kind in Minnesota. And I got to be honest, jarring to see pictures of doctors out in their white coats striking, because I've never really seen doctors strike before. Were those images jarring to you, Tiffany, to see doctors out on the picket line?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, whoa, they're outside.
I thought these doctors had to stay inside their offices at all times. Tane, no stranger to the world of medical professionals. Was it jarring to you to see doctors out there on the picket line?
Sure, which is really good that this sight of a strike like this gets a rise out of us and speaks to the fact that doctors, particularly nurses too, but healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, have a higher amount of trust from a lot of the public than a lot of other institutions at this point do. That got hurt a lot during COVID, unfortunately, as COVID got really politicized and awful. But still, that sight of doctors wearing their white coats, that is something that we don't see very often. And thankfully, I would say, still causes us to do a double take and pay attention.
One reason I don't expect doctors to strike is because they're generally well paid. And I often think of folks striking, going, we are not getting paid enough. This is, misery. We are struggling to pay our bills. We see that happen with nurses frequently. But inside this article from Jeremy Olson in the Star Tribune, he pointed out that a lot of times those online messages we get to do with our doctors are done after hours, and they're expected to do it after hours. And on top of those messages they have to do to keep up with their patients, they also have to complete just boatloads more paperwork than they used to. And given, in my opinion, the absolutely arcane way that health insurance and health coverage works in America, they often bear the brunt of sort of, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Did either of you go, you got no right to strike, y'all get paid pretty well? Or did you go, look, that sounds like a really terrible working environment and go get what's yours?
No, I'm surprised doctors don't strike more, honestly. Like, it just sounds like they have a lot going on, especially like after COVID, the haggard looks on their faces. I'm just genuinely surprised they're not even just like give us more money, but just like better our working conditions.
Yeah, doctors and nurses and healthcare people have a really hard job, and they exist within a really complicated system. That is the most understated thing that I will hopefully say on this podcast. But the healthcare system is really difficult. It's difficult for us as patients, but it's also really complicated for the doctors, the nurses, the other staff who are trying to navigate it. And I have seen this before. I was recently actually out in Boston, Minnesota, where they just had a dust up over their local clinic, where the clinic, which was run by a larger healthcare system, had told the doctors, we don't want you to do live births here anymore, like healthcare delivery. And so, but the doctors on the site said, well, there's not another place in town or nearby that we need to do it. And it's turned into a pretty significant fight that's going on between some of those doctors and the healthcare system that they work with, to the point of them wanting to go out and start their own independent healthcare facility. So you see these pop up from different places, and maybe there's a way almost in which it is inspiring because it is about something more than money in at least a bunch of these cases. It's at least doctors making the argument, we can't provide the kind of care that we feel like we are obligated to provide because the system is not supporting us in a way where we can do that.
Yeah, to your point, Tane, I think when people who serve us strike, so also I'm thinking about the Minneapolis teachers, sometimes the dichotomy can be like, they're so selfish. What about the people they help? What about the kids? But to your point, they just want to be better for the people they help. And they're like very tapped into like the constraints to helping them do their job better. Which leads to my question, what is happening to the patients who have appointments? I was going to make an appointment, actually.
It is not like a system failure for Allina. So a lot of folks who have appointments are able to keep those appointments. And in fact, 25% of the union doctors from Allina still opted to continue to work. It's worth mentioning that the Annandale Clinic, about an hour north and west of the Twin Cities, is closed today. But Allina is going to be able to move people from other systems and call in some doctors to try to honor most of those appointments. But again, Tiffany, it changes if this strike becomes long running. Same as for teachers. If you have a day, you're going to navigate something different than if it becomes something that goes on for longer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk also about the fact that it's not surprising that it's Allina. Like, I don't think there's any, like health system that is an emblem of perfect relations with their staff and with their people. But Allina has some particular dirt on their name. In 2023, they were like, oh, what if people who owe us money can't see their doctor unless they're like bleeding out of their eye? Basically, like if it's an emergency room setting, you can get in. But if it's just preventative, we're going to preventative you from getting your health care. And not only was that rescinded by Allina, that was then banned at the state level. It's just one of those things. You do have to know who you're messing with. And Allina does not have a great reputation for holding up their end of the deal as caring partners. Tiffany, you talk about doctors, nurses, educators often going, look, we're doing this strike because we can't do what we pledged to do unless these systems change. The idea that Allina might be really behind the eight ball for making the right environment for doctors to thrive and for patients to thrive is not surprising given their track record.
Yeah, that's my doctor. That's my healthcare provider. They do seem very stressed there, and they won't reimburse my parking, even though there's nowhere else to park.
Man.
Tane, do you want to come to the defense of big medicine?
No, yeah, please. That is the reputation I want on a podcast and for listeners. The only piece I was going to just throw out there was the notion that, like, I don't know, is there any part of the healthcare system that isn't broken? And I'm not necessarily naming this. I think the case that you just made makes a lot of sense. There are going to be a batch of changes to healthcare that our government is pushing forward, and we have not really seen what this is going to do to the system overall. So we're still right now in a government shutdown, which is something Democrats are saying we want to restore these subsidies that were part of Obamacare. That's one piece of this. There's also all kinds of funding going for rural hospitals because Medicare reimbursement rates, like this is a whole podcast we could do. All I'm saying is that I don't think that stories like this is just going to be one and done. I think that we're going to see more churning and more tension and difficulty within this space because there's just a lot moving around and things are not really set up particularly well at this particular moment. And so where that comes out, I don't know. But I think that we're going to probably see more stuff like this coming up.
Blazing hot take, Tane. That Allina's not going to come through and go, oh, our bad. Sorry. What do y'all need? It's all good. We're all good. You're right. This is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what's going to be happening for healthcare in the coming months and years. We want to know from you. What do you think about the healthcare you receive? What do you think's wrong with healthcare? Also, what side streets should Tiffany park on to start saving money when she does go to the doctor? Send us a text or leave us a voicemail. It's Colfax, Tiffany. You got to give Colfax a try. 612-217-0637. There's more news to discuss. Before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. Tiffany, where do you buy your swords?
I make them.
Okay. Tane, do you buy your swords, at a place? Or are you also a blacksmith like Tiffany Bui?
No, Tiffany makes all my swords.
That's right. Tane, I have a sword for you right now.
That's good. I have to defend myself later.
Reddit is an oasis of random joy and annoyingness in these times where I think everybody's talking about the election. We're trying to drive the conversation in the Twin Cities. And then our man, Rusty Soup Spoon, goes, where the hell can I buy a sword? I love you, Rusty. I want to help you. And I was excited to find out and answer this quickly. Perhaps the most useful place to buy a sword, if Tiffany won't sell you one, is Arms and Armor in Northeast. Trivia Mafia used to have an office in the same building as Arms and Armor. And I always thought, how are you going to tell a company that makes swords that their rent is late. Like, just, okay, oh, cool. Our rent is late, but this javelin is right on time. Like, these people make medieval weaponry, and I'm sure they are permitted more than a 5-day grace period to pay for these things. But Rusty Soup Spoon is not alone. Other people need to know where to buy swords, and the consensus generally was arms and armor. But that is far from the most exciting conversation that happened recently in the Twin Cities Reddit. So another question, Tane, how often do you go to the zoo in a year?
Very rarely. I've been to both zoos once each, I believe.
Tiffany, how frequently do you visit the zoo?
Not often. They make me sad.
There is the making you sad. There is also the fact that the grand majority of people at zoos either have kids or are high. And I think that I just want to be very clear. I have kids. I go to the zoo a lot. And whenever I see people not connected to children, I am just legitimately going, how high are you? So the deal is that apparently I also need to be wondering, are these people tripping balls? There is a post from Deaf Not Death on Reddit asking about great places for Deaf Not Deaf to enjoy their bi-yearly acid trip. And a lot of people were chiming in about where you could enjoy an acid trip in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the zoo came up. So honestly, like, let's back up from the acid question. Where can you actually enjoy nature and calm in the Twin Cities, even when it's cold out? So Tiffany, do you have any recommendations for our acid tripping friends who need a moment of calm, but in the middle of winter?
I love the Arboretum, regardless of whether or not one is tripping on acid, which I've never done. Not to out myself as like a DARE adherent. But that's lovely. And I think, if you're bundled up, it's probably not too bad.
I was just at the Arboretum. It was the first time that I've done events there before, but this is the first time that I ever went to just go walk around. And you're absolutely right. It's lovely. Mm-hmm. It's a library of trees, basically.
It is. Oh my gosh, that's a good way to put it. And also runner-up, Eloise Butler Wildflower Garden and Bird Sanctuary. Very lovely. Nice walk. I did do that while I was high, and we were doing a frog finding walk. Like, there was this guy walking around, like, helping us find frogs. We did not find any frogs. We did not hear any frogs. But I was like, wow, the trees are so tall and it's so dark.
I have never done acid, and I did shrooms once in one of the most non-natural environments of all time. The only time I've ever done shrooms was in Manhattan, and I had such a great time that I don't think I'll ever do shrooms again. And I don't really want to put my thumb on the scale of something for acid when what I'm talking about is shrooms. But Deaf Not Deaf, consider perhaps being in an urban environment where you can get into warm places, but just treating it with sort of the wonder of nature. Because what I found was that suddenly all these buildings that felt so utilitarian before, when I was on mushrooms, felt so much more like things that creatures had built, namely humans. But it gave me a more natural response to the urban environment. So grab a jacket, Deaf Not Deaf, and look for frogs and go to the zoo. That's my advice for our friends in the acid-taking world.
Some suggestions from the Reddit thread. The Skyway, as to your urban point, Sean. The Skyways would be pretty wild, especially over the holidays with all the decorations and giant trees.
I do like this as a strategy for, really, like, if we're not going to do holodazzle, but if we could just get enough lights up with enough people on controlled substances.
And then it's basically holodazzle.
Basically. Yeah, just hand out elf hats for everybody as they come in, and it'll be a parade.
We give everybody acid. We're like, you don't see the lights? There's lights everywhere, my man. This is the way we could save a bunch of money.
Budget holodazzle. MIA and the Walker. Those are great suggestions. Lots of pretty art. I did get yelled at for standing too close to the art once, but I was sober. Chain of Lakes. Minnehaha Falls, especially if the falls are frozen. That's a great idea. Someone said Mall of America? No.
Horrible.
No.
Kick them off Reddit.
Someone said 100% not the zoo. So fair. And can't go wrong with Walmart.
That's one of the most inaccurate statements I've heard in my life. You can definitely go wrong with Walmart.
So one of my only times being at the zoo is I did a very weird event where it was me and PBS's Arthur, the aardvark. And basically it was an event for kids. And I was supposed to read a story that Arthur was part of. And he was standing next to me. Arthur was standing next to me, and all these kids were around. And I got really into it. I was not on any kind of substance. I was just having a good time. And I really did it. And I didn't think about the fact that, oh, man, it is like 90 degrees out here today. It was the summer. And this aardvark is sweating really badly. And so all of these like embellishments that I'm doing on his story, all these left turns and whatnot, all these ways that I'm working the crowd of kids to get them really into it are really just torture for the aardvark. He's not, he's like, this was supposed to be a 10-minute bit, dude. Like, let's go.
You're riffing and Arthur's like, shut up.
And and eventually somebody came out and they were like, all right, well, this event is over. Please, everyone go.
Tiffany, can I read the full recommendation from Reddit about not doing the zoo?
Yes.
Okay. So it says 100% not the zoo. I took acid before I had to dress up as Arthur the Aardvark, and I worked with Tane Danger. I was tripping balls. It was 100 degrees, and Tane kept on trying to do crowd work. I thought I was going to die.
I mean, he survived, and the kids loved it, so that's what really matters.
I also bet Arthur got paid a lot more than Tane Danger. I am not sure. I am just guessing that check is a little bigger when you're wearing an Arthur suit.
Rightfully so.
Who wants to take the mailbag melody today?
Tane?
Mailbag!
Yeah.
Well done. Almost as good as your Wrath of Khan work. We have continued to get some great notes from CityCast neighbors, and I want to give a shout out to Chris C., our newest neighbor, who sent a nice note that said, "What up, team? Super stoked to have CityCast here in the Twin Cities to help bolster the alt media, new media space. He's loving the podcast and daily emails." Thank you so much, Chris C. We appreciate you. And of course, if you want to join Chris C. and become a neighbor for CityCast Twin Cities, go to twincities.citycast.fm. Also, there's somebody in the network named Dr. G4 who is like a CityCast superfan for all the cities that CityCast covers. They actually met 5 CityCast teams in person, and we are very lucky that Dr. G4 is listening to the Twin Cities CityCast. And then I got to give a shout out to my enemy, my neighbor, Andy, who is on a campaign to make me feel bad about not raking my leaves. And he is now claiming that he does it to help the lakes. He even sent a link. Don't leave your leaves in a place where they're going to go to the lakes. I mow the leaves, guys. I take care of it. I don't litter. I don't get in there. I do it right. Tane, do you have a position on leaves? Do you rake your leaves over in South Minneapolis?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if there's anything that Minnesotans enforce with a cold, passive-aggressive will harder than people keeping their lawns in check, I've yet to see what it is. So we take great pride in having our leaves swept and our snow shoveled.
You need to shovel your snow. You do not need to rake your leaves, and you are falling for a capitalist plot, Tane. That's all for today here on CityCast Twin Cities. On Friday morning, we'll be back with an episode about Purple Rain, the victorious return of Chi-Chi's, and a weekly roundup of Twin Cities wins. I'm your host, Sean McPherson. Tane and Tiffany, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for being here, Sean. I'm going to come rake your leaves one of these days.
I'll give you a sword.
That was CityCast producer Tiffany Bui and contributor Tane Danger. You can get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to the CityCast Twin Cities newsletter. Learn more about becoming a CityCast Twin Cities neighbor at twincities.citycast.fm. If you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone on an acid trip? We'll see you back here on Friday for more news from around the city.